Hello, everyone. Welcome to Small Biz Tips. Today, I'm here with a good friend of mine. We actually met through like a inner circle mastermind group, and this guy is freaking mind blowing. So I had to bring him on the podcast to introduce him to y'all. Brandon, what's going on, bro?
What's up, man? How you doing? It's good to be here. Thanks for having me.
Thank you again for coming, man. I'm excited. Before we jump into any crazy things, tell us more about you. Who is Brandon?
Yeah, man. Good to be here, Brandon White. I'm just a guy trying to navigate through this world and leave it better than I showed up. That's something
Mm,
I try to live by. Husband, father of four. I actually live in Texas, in Houston specifically. Uh,
nice.
I'm in the event venue industry. I also work a corporate job. I'm sure we'll dive into it, but I like to say that I did everything that the world or America tells you to do to do
Mm-hmm.
things the right way and to live the American life. And I discovered that that's not quite what I thought it was, and so I pivoted, and
Don't we all?
that kind of brought me to this place. So yeah, that's me in a nutshell.
That's fantastic, man. So it's normally we have people that are full-time entrepreneurs. 99% of them don't have a 95 and be an entrepreneur. So I'm really curious to learn more about this. So you mentioned you have an event space business, so you're in that space. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, so me and my wife started Bienvenue Events. You see it here on my shirt a couple of years ago with one venue in Humble, Texas. It's a suburb of Houston.
Okay.
We were very successful pretty quickly. One thing that I always say is like, if you have a goal and you want to get somewhere, find somebody that's done it before. So that's
Mm-hmm.
exactly what we did. We found someone, probably avoided a lot of pitfalls, still found some along the way,
Yeah,
right?
of course.
There's always ups and downs. But we're able to open the venue during the pandemic. And we're
Wow.
successful, and we're able to open a second venue, which we just opened last year, at the end of last year, November,
Congrats.
closer to downtown in East Downtown. So yeah, man, we got some information, we executed on it, we learned along the way, and we're still running with that today.
I think it's pretty humble how you said, yeah, man, we opened a venue during the pandemic. That's amazing. You know how many people could not open a venue during the pandemic? Everything was shutting down. What was the mindset when, everything's going on with the pandemic and you guys said, we're going to open a venue?
Well, I think once you commit to something, you got to figure out a way to see it through. I'm not
Mm,
saying you should never pivot, because sometimes like signs are telling you maybe you need to pivot and do something different. But
yeah.
everything in Texas, context is very real. So in the geography, in the state of Texas, in the political climate, we were
Hmm.
able to, like, I was confident that we might be able to open and continue to operate, which was true. There's a few states in the US, I'm sure you could think of some
Yeah.
that weren't as shut down because of the pandemic, and obviously we had to be very smart about like how we dealt with the pandemic, with
Hmm.
people being in our space, and like all those stipulations, which is a whole nother topic. But I committed to jumping into this entrepreneurial journey. It's something that I wanted to do for a long time, even back when I was in the military. um,
Mm.
and I committed. Like, I got the information. We put some money down to get the information, to get some mentorship. We went through the learnings, and we had already started looking, and put in a lot of work. Put a business plan together, and I said, "We've come this far, and we didn't come this far just to stop because of
Hmm.
a barrier." So we kept going, and it worked out. Um,
I think that's amazing, man. You said something here. You said commit first and figure out the rest later, right?
yeah,
That's what that I would definitely think that's amazing. Now, something else I noticed is you were also in the military,
yeah.
right? I've been seeing a pattern for some of our guests. There, a lot of them were in the military, so there's something to say here about the military. What part of the military were you in? Tell us more about that background. How'd you get into the military, and then walk us forward.
Yeah, you're taking me back to high school then. So, leaving high school, so I did very well in high school. I was a straight A student. I did all the things, like I said before, that you were supposed to do to get
Hmm.
ready to go to college. I played sports. I played football. That was what I was best at. And so I
Nice.
ended up getting recruited by a military academy, United States Military Academy, the premier leadership school in the world. I still attest to that. taught me a lot of the things that I live by today. So I ended up getting
That's
a
awesome.
scholarship to go play football there. Played there 4 years. It's very much what you would think of a military academy would be like. Lots of rules, lots of stuff you
Hmm.
can't do, lots of things you don't want to do, that you have to do, but it teaches you a lot. My family and my parents growing up were really disciplined, so I had a bit of that already.
Mm,
That academy only enhanced that and made me even better, and surrounded me around people that were like, I'm talking class presidents, number one in their class,
wow.
valedictorians, like
Top
all
performers.
the titles you could give to somebody. I was surrounded by all of them, so I was just like this one guy that had all these people to look up to. We talk a lot about your network being a critical part of like your
Hmm.
success and who you surround yourself with. I was surrounded with the best of the country every
That's
day.
awesome.
And so
Wow.
that elevates you, right? And that pushes you
Yeah.
to like, this guy's a Rhodes Scholar. This guy's going to do that. This girl's going to do this. So it constantly pushes you to be better. And then I graduated, and you have to serve 5 years active duty. I've actually served 8 years
Wow. Thank you
active
for your
duty.
service.
Appreciate it, man. And I did several years in the reserves as well. Um, and that teaches you a lot, man. I was 22 when I got out of school, and
Hmm.
put in charge of 20 plus people in Korea of all places right away. And some of my classmates graduated and got put in charge of 40, 50 more people and went to Afghanistan or Iraq.
Wow.
Which, if you know anything about that time,
Yeah.
the war on terror was happening there. So you get a lot of responsibility really quick. So obviously you got to learn, or
Yeah. Fast.
well for you. So being put in that environment and being surrounded by those people teach you a lot of things about discipline, leading people, servant leadership, character,
Mm,
like all those things that can be critical to your success. Because I think I've seen my toughest days. You know what I mean?
mm.
Nothing else that I'm going to do in life that's going to be worse than some things that I've seen or heard of or know somebody that went through. Um,
Wow.
so when I
I
when
think
I look
that's
at it from
amazing,
that
man.
perspective, it helps me continue to push through. You know what I mean?
I think it's amazing because that background prepare you for where you are now,
For sure.
right? Because mindset wise, you've already disciplined. You've like, oh, I've been there, done that. I've seen this. I don't think this is gonna phase me out, and that create that mental capacity that most of us needs when
Yeah.
you in that entrepreneurial journey, which takes me forward, right? You have a very successful event space. You started a second one, and you still have a 9 to 5. How do you balance that? Because the biggest excuse you'll hear, oh my God, I have this 9 to 5, it's taking all my time. I can never start my business. You've done it.
Yeah.
Tell us more about that.
I think first you got to recognize that there's no true balance. Like there's ebbs and
Mm,
flows to life, and you just got to accept that I want to prioritize this thing, and this other thing might have to suffer. And you have to be
mm,
okay with that. I think we all strive, and you hear a lot about work-life balance, and it's just really hard to do because you're either grinding really hard at work, or maybe you have
yeah,
to sacrifice at work to take care. Like we just had a baby recently, so like there's always ebbs and flows and places where you're putting more priority. Like when we were starting to open the first space, and when we're starting to open the second space, like you
yeah.
really have to prioritize those things, and other things have to suffer. So I think it's first just recognizing that, and then also going back to my background, like since high school and really college, like from the time I woke up till the time I went to bed, like I had something that
Boom,
I had to
boom, boom.
do, and so I got really good at scheduling my time to make sure that I maximized it. And of course, I'm human, right? So
Yeah.
I say all these things, and people like to think that I'm some like super that doesn't sleep or doesn't like take downtime, but I do. Like I
Hmm.
waste time. I scroll on social media. I'm not perfect, right? But I
Yeah.
know how to get into a regiment and prioritize and strategize things. And I think that helps us push things along. But I could still do better because I think honestly, if I was a little bit better or I got rid of my 9 to 5, we would be light years ahead of where we are now from an entrepreneurship perspective. But I
Mm,
love the work that I do now. So, I like to be able to do both and kind of fulfill me in multiple ways.
that's fantastic, man. So my question now is, you started this event space business.
Yeah.
tell us more about that because a lot of people don't understand how the event space business work, right? Because you always think when you think of event space, you're thinking of, oh, it's a wedding hall where people just get married. You know, you
Yeah.
don't think like you can leverage an event space and have a really lucrative business. So tell us more about the business side of it. How does it work? What are some of the people that you guys work with? How big is the space? All the details.
Yeah. So the event space industry, I don't like to say that it's a needs based business, but I always like to proposition or ask the question like, how many of you have been to a baby shower, a wedding, a networking event,
Mm-hmm.
a birthday party, anniversary dinner? And normally, when I just say one or two of those things, everyone would
Everybody.
have to
Yeah.
raise their hand, right?
Yep.
How many of those things also happen every single year? You have a birthday every year, right?
That's true.
We're getting married all the time. People unfortunately die all the time. Like there's events
Yep.
around funerals as well. Like there's so many different things that happen. How many people have been to a corporate retreat, a corporate training,
Mm-hmm.
pop-up shop? There's so many things that happen with regularity where people need a space to congregate. And so
Mm.
when you think about the event space business versus other things, no, it's not a grocery store. No, it's not something that is like truly, I need this to survive. But if you want to have an event and you want to congregate with people, and we naturally as humans want to be around other folks. We're tribal in nature. Like we have that desire to connect with people. Most people
Mm-hmm.
do, right? So knowing that those two things are true, like these events are always going to happen, people want to get together, especially when you think about what we had to go through in the last few years with the pandemic
Yeah.
and not being together and doing this Zoom call and getting that Zoom fatigue and being stuck with your family or by yourself, if you don't have
Yeah.
a family, you're looking for those things to get outside, as people like to say. So it's the perfect time to think about, if I open this events based business and I provide something that is attractive to people in the space, I have the right amenities and the right package. I've done my analysis to make sure that I'm competitive in my market.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, it's very location based, that I can be successful. Because all you really need for a venue is a nice building, four walls, right? Bathrooms,
Mm-hmm.
tables, and chairs.
Mm.
Everything else, most people will just bring in themselves. They'll want to bring in their own food. They'll want to bring in their own DJ. They'll want to bring in their own decorations. So we offer some of those things as add-ons now to
Gotcha.
increase package, um, our revenue per package.
Yeah.
But that's not something you need right away, especially up front. And when I talk to people about opening spaces, unless you just have a lot of capital up front that you want to invest to like build
Yeah.
and make something super nice, I say find something that is as close as possible to an event space. Maybe it used to be one. Maybe you could just
Mm-hmm.
paint the walls and clean up the floor, and there, boom, there's your four walls and there's your event space, right? Then all you got to do is buy the tables and chairs,
Mm.
post it on the internet. Like obviously, there's more steps to
Of
that.
course. Yeah.
Posted on the internet, people are like, "Oh, my birthday party's in 2 months. This is a nice space. Let me look
So
into it."
I'm curious, right? You mentioned location is very important. What have you seen to be some of the best location for an event space? Would you say like because sometimes you're looking at, okay, does it need to be in an urban area or does it need to be in a suburb? Or like, how do I know this space is good enough for an event space business?
Yeah, good question. I mean, location, location, location. When you think about real estate, you want to
Yeah.
be as visible as possible. You have to understand your market. Like in Houston, parking's a big deal. If you were in
Mm,
like New York, parking's probably not as big a deal. You know what I mean? But for us, it's a big deal to make sure we have enough
yeah.
parking for everyone that's there. Uh, and I say you want to be as visible as possible, but there's ways to overcome that. Like our first space is actually right off a highway, but it sits behind a bunch of trees. So you
Mm,
can't always see it unless you're looking for it. Like you have to know what you're looking for to see it. Because most people, when they come in for tours and things like that, say, "Oh, I didn't even know this was here, but I saw you on such and such page or wherever and found us that way." So you can help yourself a lot by finding places that are visible that people see, that have a lot of
yeah.
foot traffic or vehicle traffic. When you're thinking about intersections, highways, etc. But it's not the end all be all. Um, but actually, can you re-ask? I'm not sure I even answered your
Yeah,
question.
yeah, no, no, no. I was talking about the location, right? It's how do I identify, okay, is this a good location or not? You
Yeah,
mentioned highway, traffic, depends on the city that you in, right? Does it need parking, no parking?
yeah.
So is there like, would you go to like a city website and kind of do analysis, or would you hire some real estate agents? How did you guys find that first space?
I think there's a two-pronged attack that you should take. Absolutely
Mm,
hire a realtor because it costs you zero. Um,
mm,
One, let me back up and say first, I would only start in a place that I knew. So I would want to be
okay.
somewhere near where I lived, because I think for the first space, it's really critical for you to understand your market, really kind of know the ins and outs because you live there.
Yeah,
But also hire a commercial realtor to help you search. But then we did that, and they sent us venues to look at, or locations to look at that could be potential venues. But I found the most success by just driving around,
mm,
going going my normal route, but looking with a different eye, right? Once you put your brain
yeah,
on something, you see it a lot more. When I started to look for lease signs, that's all I can ever see now because they're everywhere in every city in
yeah,
the US. And I'm confident in saying that because of the pandemic, among other things. So now I see it. So I used to drive my normal route and would see things, but then I started thinking about where do I not normally go that is a busy
mm,
road, that is an intersection, that is off of a highway, that might be a good spot. So I started driving those places I didn't normally go. You could spend a couple hours a week, an hour a weekend, and you could see
yeah,
multiple spaces. And all you got to do is peek in the window, take a picture of the information. I used to send the number of the whoever the leasing agent was to my realtor and let him
yeah,
handle
handle it.
conversation. But I'm like, hey, I like this space. It's kind of what I'm looking for. It's in a good area from what I can tell. And then we would run it like that. But I definitely think you should do both because that's the best
That's
way to get to
cool.
your area.
So when you have a space, let's say you start generating revenue, what are some of the challenge have you seen that you guys overcome to kind of make sure that things running? What are things that when you first started, you said, "Oh, I wish I would have known that and would have done a little bit better."
The biggest thing I tell people is I wouldn't have spent as much money as we did up front to build out a really nice space. Like it's
Hmm.
done really well, but again, going back to my point of only needing four walls, we didn't need
Yeah.
that to start generating profit. Because the more money you invest, obviously, the longer it's going to take for you to
To
make that
profit. Yeah.
back, right? So I think depending on your goals, like this depends on the person, right? Again, if you have a lot of capital, you have a grand venue in your mind for like what you want to do. Maybe you build it out, but then again, I would still even argue like prove to yourself that you can do it. Put
Yeah.
the minimum viable product, that MVP, out there that you can do, and see if you can generate revenue. Figure out the kinks, the processes,
Gotcha.
and then build that
Build
nice.
over there.
Now you already got the processes. You have a audience of people that have been in your venue. If you build a
Yeah.
nice, big, nicer venue, of course they're going to come because they've already seen what you can do in the venue that you have.
Yeah.
Uh, so that's one thing. The other thing I think is automation is really key, especially for us. Like I don't go to the venue. Like it's really rare that I go to the venue. I probably go like once a month, once or twice.
Nice.
We have a team in place now. We have a couple people on ground plus a virtual assistant that really help with that. But
Hmm.
even when we didn't have that, I tried to put automations in place up front to make sure things happen. One example is like keyless door entry, right? Punching in a
Nice.
code that you can update. So you don't always necessarily have to be there to let them
Got
in.
to answer it. Yeah.
So that was one thing that was really big. And the other big one that I'll mention, it is a person, but a virtual assistant to do all the back end, like receiving of phone calls, going through contract,
Follow-ups.
follow up, all that stuff were two big things that really helped propel us
Wow.
forward and didn't so I didn't spend like all my nights and hours um, looking at contracts, following up, trying to call people, trying not to call people too late, you know,
Yeah. Yeah.
five. All of those things really helped with that.
That's awesome, man. I think people don't. I would love for people to understand how lucrative this space is, right? If you were able to share, what was the average investment to start the place, and what would you say is kind of like an average investment to keep it running? And what have you seen has been kind of like a range in terms of revenue generated? It varies per location, but just
Yeah.
from your perception and experience.
Yeah, and obviously this is location based as you said,
Yeah.
but I think for most people, at a minimum, you should be looking to profit 10 to 15K a month in a venue. If you are
Wow.
maximizing it in a way that you have yoga, you have dance, you have cheer class,
Nice.
you have wedding, and then all the ones you always think of that I named,
Yeah. Yeah.
looking to
Birthday.
fill that space Monday through Friday as much as possible. And it's harder to fill it during the week, right? Because
Yeah.
there's less people that want, but think of all the corporations, small businesses, networking, lunches, and the classes
Wow.
that I mentioned that people might want to do in your space. That will lead you to that type of revenue and beyond. So I think that should be like your minimum goal to me to
Mm,
make it worthwhile, 10 to 15 K. And that's
that's
profit
awesome. That's just one space.
with just one space, right? Your biggest cost is going to be your lease
Hmm.
more often than not. We have something that's called triple net that's pretty common in the US, but definitely common in Houston, which is basically just the landlord passing on some of his or her cost to you. That is
Gotcha.
a lot of times included in that. It's included but
So
kind of
it's like
separate. So
electricity and water.
it depends on how they do it, but yeah, sometimes
Okay.
it's cleaning of common areas. It depends on how the building is kind of broken down.
Gotcha. Structured and the zoning and stuff.
But yeah,
That's
so
cool,
that
man.
rent is typically your biggest cost, and I'll leave this one gem to help you think about cost because most of the other costs kind of depend on how you decide to package. And when you
Yeah.
package, you're going to have the cost, and then I'm adding something on top of that to make sure that the cost is covered and that
Yeah.
I'm
And then
getting
you
a
make a
little bit of
profit.
profit for that, right? But for your overhead cost, your rent is one of them. And the way I think about that, you think about your rent, your insurance, and maybe if you hire some people, uh,
Hmm.
add those costs up. So let's say it's $5,000 a month
Yeah.
for like a 1,500 to 2,000 square foot space. And obviously, this is very geography
Yeah.
dependent, right? So say it's 5 grand for those things, and maybe like running your website and those little things. Like most of those costs aren't big. You
Huge.
want to be able to cover that cost in half a month's 2 weekends worth of events, right? So be
Hmm.
very conservative. And let's say I'm a brand new venue, people don't know me, I'm getting started. I think I can have 2 events a month. I mean, 2 events
Mm.
a weekend. Most of your events are going to be on the weekend. So let's say I have one
Yeah.
on Saturday, one on Friday. Every once in a while, I might have one on Sunday. So let's just say on average, it's two
Hmm.
events. So that means in 2 weekends, you can have four.
Yeah.
If you think you can charge $1,000 per event,
Yeah.
that means you're making 4 grand off of those four events.
Weekends.
Your
Yeah.
cost is 5 grand. I would say that's probably not a good deal when you're looking
Yeah.
at spaces to go because you can't cover it in those first two.
Yeah. You can cover your overhead completely.
But let's say you can make 1,500 off of those events.
Mm.
You've done your analysis. You think if you put this package together with these amenities, you can charge 1,500.
Yeah.
People will pay that. That means you'll make 6,000, right?
Yeah.
You'll make 6,000 in those 2 weekends in that 2 event per weekend example, right? And your costs are 5,000. So you can cover your cost in just two
Yeah.
weekends worth of events.
That's right. And the
Everything,
other two is just
everything on top
profit.
of that is just profit.
Yeah.
If you think about it that way, that's a good way to do like a behind the napkin quick analysis of does it make
Can I
sense to pay
afford
for
this?
this
Yeah.
space? Can I afford it?
I
Um,
love it.
so that's the
That's
way I think
awesome.
about it in the way that I like to tell people to think about their venue. And if
Wow.
you're
Now
only
with
doing 2 events per weekend, you're doing something wrong. You'll have slow times, of course, like Christmas, holidays can be
yeah.
slower, period slower, but even then, still 2 should be feasible most of the time. So, yeah, I tell people that is a conservative estimate, but you should be doing much more than that.
Wow. Now, I want to ask you this question to wrap things up, right? You work as a 9 to 5, plus you're an entrepreneur, and you have this business that's running like a well-oiled machine. What is that one tip that you would share with any business owners? Maybe they're just starting, or they're in that position now. They're 9 to 5, and they have their business on the side. It's not fully out yet. What would be that one tip you would share that can help them really take it to that new level?
I think the biggest things boils down to two words. It's execution is in failure.
Mm,
Be more apt to execute even if it leads to failure, because that failure is going to be a lesson that's going to propel you to your next
mm.
destination. Um, Take knowledge and execute on it and see what happens. Like I said, commit first, and then you can
Figure
figure
out the
out the rest
rest.
later, right?
Yeah.
Um, that execution piece is so key. A lot of people are just so afraid. What if I fail? What if
Mm,
I what if I lose this investment? What if people judge me? What if people look at me a certain way? Flip
mm.
that on the other side. What if you do succeed?
Yeah.
What if people do see you succeeding and look at you in the right light? What if that
Yeah.
investment returns that ROI that you expected? Um, or if you do fail, what if it's the failure is what you need to learn the lesson to teach you what you need to know to get to the next level? Because there's
Wow.
things we didn't do right, right? I talked about we invested a lot of upfront. We didn't do that the
Yeah.
second time. So we spent less on the second venue. Now we're looking
It's,
at other things like what if we were to just buy a venue that already exists? What would that look
yeah.
like? I wouldn't have ever gotten there had I not taken the risk of opening a venue during the pandemic. So we just
Mm,
decided we're going to execute. And I'm not saying that that fear disappears, right? But you got to embrace it. So
yeah.
long story short, man, embrace the fear and execute.
I love it. I love it. This is fantastic. How do people get in touch with you? If people want to work with you or visit your venue, like, do you have anything that they can work with you on?
Yeah, absolutely. The easiest way is just to get on Instagram. Most people are there these days. Just look me
Mm-hmm.
up. My handle's there, BW37. That'll lead you to the venue. If you're interested in learning more about opening a venue yourself, just DM me that you're interested to do so. And I'm thinking about hosting a boot camp in June potentially, where
Nice.
I will walk you. I'll spend a day and walk you through everything. I'll normally have special guests like my CPA and like my cleaning vendors. We didn't even talk about vendors.
Oh
Uh,
yeah.
like there's a lot that goes into it, but if you do it right, like there's potential for great relationship building, right? A lot of these
Yeah.
relationships have led to other things, and I know I'm kind of going off on a tangent, but uh, the venue is the best place, man, to network and build relationships. And if you own one, you're the
People come to you.
natural connector. And there's so many things that have happened in my life because of this venue in just less than 2 years. Um,
Wow.
so
That's
yeah,
amazing, man. Wow. Thank you again for jumping on, guys. Check out Brandon. He is that guy. As you can see, his Instagram at BW37. Is that it?
yep, that's it.
Fantastic. Reach out to him. I'll put the everything on the show notes as well. Thank you for your time, brother. Have a good one.
I appreciate you, bro.